Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be looking at the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie on Netflix. So this is the 9th installment in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise and is the third attempt at a direct sequel to the original 1974 Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. It follows a group of teenagers who have bought a small Texas town named Harlow with the intention of revamping it. And from there, an incident results in Leatherface targeting them. Plus, Sally Hardesty, the sole survivor of the original movie, sees this as an opportunity to finally exact her revenge and make Leatherface pay for what he did to her friends 50 years ago. So before I get into the review, here's what I think of each and every Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie leading up to the new one. I love the original film from 1974. I think it's arguably the greatest slasher film in history. Whether or not you agree with that, there's no denying that it broke new ground. Then there's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, which was more of a comedy than a horror film, and that's exactly why I love it. I could watch this one over and over again and it'll never get old. There's a reason why it's become a cult classic. And honestly, it's my favorite entry in the entire franchise. I think it's better than the original. Leatherface Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. This movie was okay. It had its moments, but it didn't really have anything unique going for it. Then Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation, the fourth and final movie in the original timeline, one that is often considered to be the worst entry in the entire franchise, but I disagree. It has a weird flavor to it. It's very bizarre, and that's kind of why I can get some enjoyment out of it. So for me, it isn't the worst of the franchise. But even then, that's not saying much, because let's face it, it's not a good movie. Then the 2003 remake of the original film. I don't think it's amazing, but I still do like it, and I know a lot of people consider it to be one of the better installments in the franchise, but I think it's more effective if you haven't seen the original film, or if you haven't seen a lot of slasher films that have a lot in common with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Then that movie got a prequel called Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning, fleshing out the origins of Leatherface and his cannibalistic family. This one is very underrated in my opinion. I actually like it more than I do the remake. And while it's nothing amazing, it's still a lot of fun. Then you have Texas Chainsaw 3D, another attempt at a direct sequel to the original film. This is the first one that I actually saw, like, ever, and I kinda liked it at the time when it first came out, but the more I rewatch it, the more I dislike it. And while it isn't flat out terrible, it's kind of embarrassing as an attempt to make a true sequel to the original. And it's easily the worst installment in the entire franchise. Then you have Leatherface, which was set in the same timeline as the original movie and Texas Chainsaw 3D, and served as a prequel to both of those movies. It was another attempt to flesh out the origins of Leatherface, and I think it actually did a better job at that than the beginning did. And I like it more than most people. I think it gets way more hate than it deserves. So when it comes to the new movie that just came out, my expectations were rather low, because this was another attempt at relaunching the franchise, and if the prior attempts had failed, then I thought to myself, what was the point in trying again if they keep failing at it? Plus, the behind the scenes issues that plagued the film only added to my skepticism, because the original pair of directors that they had hired were fired after just 1 week of production, and they were immediately replaced by David Blue Garcia. Plus, when production had wrapped on the film, Legendary Pictures, who now own the rights to the franchise, decided to sell the movie to Netflix. Which sucks, because I was really looking forward to seeing this in theaters, and it wasn't meant to be. Oh well. But putting all of that aside, what do I think of the actual movie? Is it a return to form for the franchise? Is it a decent slasher flick that'll keep you fairly entertained? Or is it gonna be a massive pile of shit? Well, surprisingly, I actually enjoyed this movie. I had a fun time watching it. And while it's nothing amazing and is bound to be one of my least favorite Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies, it does have a few decent tricks up its sleeve here and there. So let's get into it. So first of all, I think the technical aspects for the most part were spot on. The cinematography, the camera tricks, the overall color grading, especially for the bus scene, and even the graphics for the title sequence and the end credits. I also found the acting to be spot on. The actors playing the teenagers did a great job, and I'd like to see where their careers take them, because I do think they're talented. Plus, the new actors portraying Leatherface and Sally Hardesty were also fantastic. It's a shame that Marilyn Barnes passed away when she did, which meant that she could never reprise the role of Sally again, but her replacement definitely filled that void. I also like the new Leatherface in this movie. I thought the mask was pretty cool. It looked cheap at first in the trailers, but upon watching the movie, it grew on me, and you know, some people criticized him for being a bit too smart, considering he's mentally handicapped, but it's been 50 years. I think he's bound to be a little bit smarter at this point in time. Plus, I think his motive for pursuing the teenagers made perfect sense. There's a couple of nods and references to the original film in this, and even John Larroquette himself returns to narrate the beginning of the film. The musical score is pretty decent as well. The movie aimed for a very traditional score, but it was really the end credits theme that stuck out to me. If you're a big fan of the gore in these movies, well, don't worry, this movie's got you covered. There's plenty of that at every corner. And if your favorite kills are the chainsaw kills, then there's plenty of those here. Underneath the surface, this movie does have a couple of things to say. Whereas the original film was pretty much a pro-vegetarian film, this one goes for an anti-gun message and even pokes fun at how progressive Americans have become. I mean, in the bus scene, you've seen this in the trailer, but there's the guy who says, "Try anything and you're canceled, bro," to Leatherface. And all of this makes for a fun experience. Now, this movie is far from perfect. I definitely have a few problems with it. Firstly, it's nothing you haven't seen before. This movie brings very little new to the franchise or even to the genre. It cobbles together ideas from Texas Chainsaw 3D as well as the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. Plus, the whole storyline with Sally Hardesty's quest for revenge against Leatherface, it's too reminiscent of what was done in Halloween 2018 with Laurie Strode, planning to get her revenge on Michael Myers. So yeah, in a lot of ways, it's very derivative. Plus, I had some issues with the technical aspects. For example, even though the gore was handled really well, there are shots where you can tell that they're blatantly using CGI blood. And while it's nowhere near as bad as the CGI blood from Texas Chainsaw 3D, it's still pretty noticeable. Some of the editing was awkward as well, and towards the end, they go for this choppy slow-mo, and at first it seems okay, but then it kind of overstays its welcome. And lastly, the characters. While the actors playing the teenagers were great, their characters were not the best of the franchise, and they're basically just cannon fodder. So I'm pretty sure you can guess who's gonna make it out of this one alive. And even the storyline with Sally Hardesty was underwhelming. She's basically relegated to a side character, and she only has a few scenes leading up to the climax. Plus, on the whole, it just isn't handled as well as Laurie Strode's revenge plot against Michael Myers from Halloween 2018. So yeah, I think they could have done a better job with that. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. It's still decent, but don't go in expecting anything spectacular. Now, I don't really have the energy to make a ranking video for this franchise, so I'm gonna rank all of the movies here right now. Texas Chainsaw 3D, Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, Texas Chainsaw Massacre The Next Generation, Texas Chainsaw Massacre The New One, the 2003 remake, the 2006 prequel The Beginning, Leatherface from 2017, the original film, and then the sequel, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Next time, I'm going to begin my Ozark retrospective with a review of Season 1. I'm only going to be reviewing the first 3 seasons because only half of Season 4 is currently available on Netflix, and when the second half becomes available, I'll watch it and review that season in its entirety all in one video, followed by an Ozark ranking video. So thank you all for watching. Please be sure to like the video, share it, and subscribe. Hit the notification icon. Be safe during this time, and I'll see you soon.